He literally grew up in his father's music studio. At the age of 9, he was already recording drum tracks with professional musicians. In 2010, he was asked to join Donald Fagen, McDonald and Boz Scaggs in the Dukes of September. For the past several years, he has been with the band Toto. Shannon Forrest talks about that and more in this episode of Drumheads and Tales. Shannon Forrest, welcome to Drumheads and Tales.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Well, I
My
really
pleasure.
appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
So you grew up in South Carolina. How did you get involved in playing the drums?
Okay. Well, I was very fortunate. I grew up in a musical family, and my dad had a recording studio. He was already working independently, before I was born, and then when I was 4, he built his own place. So I got to grow up around music in the studio in the first place. Like a lot of kids, they gravitate toward drums,
Mm-hmm.
And that was me. I used to sit in the back of the drum booth with a really fantastic drummer that not many people would know, but his name Buster Phillips. Yeah, I mean, a really phenomenal drummer. So I'm 4 years old, sitting in the tiny corner with headphones on, and I was really lucky to have access to that.
Listening to him.
Yeah, just feeling groove, because he's a really great groove drummer,
Yeah. But that must have been tremendous, a tremendous upbringing, being around all that music with your dad and when you were so young.
Yeah, for sure.
Did he push you toward the drums at all, or did he just let you kind of find your way?
No, that was like there's some interesting things. We were in a smaller town, and my mom had some real emphasis spiritually about wanting a drummer to come into my dad's sphere there. I don't know that she was intending it to be her son, but as it happened, I gravitated toward that, and he gave me the opportunity to record at a very early age, so I was never treated like a child, and by the time I was 9, I was doing some recording for him.
That's great.
Yeah.
So you eventually went to Nashville.
Yeah.
And I know you played with just about everyone under the sun. How did you get to that point in your career from South Carolina?
Yeah. Well, that goes back again to my mother looking out for me, and my dad too. But basically, the clientele and the work that he had in that studio in South Carolina, Greenville area, was slowing down. So it made sense for him to go to a bigger music center like that. And by that time, I was just starting high school, and I was playing on all my dad's work, by that point. So, they did that also to help me get access to that community around Nashville. And so, for instance, a dear friend of mine, bassist Glenn Worf, who's been with Mark Knopfler for going on 30 years now. Mm-hmm. I did my first session with Glenn when I was 13.
Wow.
So in the Nashville community, a lot of the guys I've worked with there, I worked with since before I got out of high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the craziest recording session you've ever done, and you don't have to mention any names if you don't want to.
Craziest in what regard? Do you know what I mean?
I guess there's some that have been nightmares.
Well,
and some of them that have been a riot.
Yeah, I've been lucky, I guess, that I've never had any extreme personalities, to deal with on a session.
Yeah.
Nashville is a fairly affable community,
Yeah.
And so they're not. You won't last very long if you're too hard to deal with. So I didn't run into that too much. Maybe, I really. I'm fortunate to say I don't have anything that extreme to talk about. The ones that stand out, maybe. Oddly enough, maybe the most rock and roll group I ever worked with in Nashville for everything coming through there was the Chieftains.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people will go, what, the Chieftains? But man, the spirit and intent of those guys, and just the traveling sort of troubadour nature of them, and all that old, those Celtic reels, and I just remember thinking when we were playing these things, you could feel the origin of so much music, but then the way those guys played it, without drums, I'm playing like these Taos, wooden drums, Native American things, and they've got the bodhrán going there, and I'm telling you, I felt like we were levitating at one point. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
like the energy got so strong with those guys. So, you know, probably not the answer you were expecting, but maybe the Chieftains was the most rock and roll session I ever did there.
That's cool. So Nashville, is that where you met David Hungate?
It is.
David is pretty plugged into the music community, so that must have been very helpful as far as connections.
Oh, well, yes, for sure.
But you had others.
Yeah, well, David, I mean, I know the exact session. I know the exact day that I met him. And David, along with my dad and a bassist named Michael Rose, are probably the three most impactful people in my personal and musical growth, you know.
Yep.
And David, I met when I was 19. You know, we hit it off immediately. I could just tell people that you can imagine I probably embarrassed myself that day trying a little too hard, you know what I mean? But I think he was able to hear past that, and you know, we had an immediate, you know, friendship, and I mean, he helped me in so many ways. He's certainly in so many steps along the way the reason I'm here with these guys today. You know, he made the first introduction.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Don Henley was doing a Trisha Yearwood recording session and stopped the track. Tell me about that.
Well, this came back to me because to some extent, I felt like I was on an island in Nashville. You know what I mean? That, like, David Hungate being there, but I was always trying to get my voice to reach beyond, you know, the boundary lines of that musical community and get, you know. So when I found out Don was, he was working on a overdub vocal on this Trisha Yearwood record, and the producer, who I was good friends with, called me to tell me this because he knew it would mean something to me. They were working on this one track. It's called Inside Out, and Don stopped the track, and of course Don is a knowing drummer, you know. He goes, "Hey, who's that playing drums? It sounds like Jeff Porcaro," you know. So when that was just like a ray of sunlight kind of coming in, like going, "Hey man, you may not feel like you're reaching outside this community the way you hope, but it was
getting noticed."
Getting noticed, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now you're here today in New Hampshire on tour with Toto. You've been with the band on and off for several years.
Yeah.
But was it ever intimidating for you at the beginning, covering the drum parts for the late, great Jeff Porcaro?
Of course, there's a component of that. You know, probably the biggest thing for me was just knowing his presence among the musicians that I was playing with. You know, he's to this day my favorite musician. You know, like nothing. I was just telling. I just discovered David Gilmour's About Face record. You know, and still to this day, when I'm, you know, what I love to listen for in drummers, whenever I find something I haven't heard before and it's Jeff, it still hits me like it did when I was a kid. You know what I mean? That groove is just something. So, you know, it's hard to put into words what that part with Jeff is, because you know, the truth of it is I would 1,000 times over rather not be here. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And you know, and still be listening to him play. You
Right.
know? So yeah.
When I listened to Porcaro's playing, it seemed like he kind of played with such conviction and confidence that in itself made him unique.
Yeah, for sure. I think any drummer, any musician, you know, and I guess we probably all struggle with that kind of confidence. Jeff stood out to me so loudly amongst drummers because he never deviated from the way he played. You know, he played his way on everything he played on, and it always worked. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely the thing that stuck out to me the most as a kid. I think before you even know what it is about someone's playing, it's their personality that you're really getting a piece of.
Yep,
You know,
yep.
and that definitely comes through loud and clear with Jeff, like nobody. You know.
What is or was the most difficult Toto song for you to cover? And if there wasn't one that really threw you, then?
Well, I had the benefit of, you know, I was so close to that music growing up, so influenced, like so many of us were, that I know their book of tunes particularly the stuff Jeff played on, well, because all that stuff happened by the time I was 18 years old, you know, those years where you're listening to records, and so I would study everything Jeff played, so I had a good look into that. You know, what's challenging, I mean, the most challenging part of it is just to remember the groove, remember to try to focus on making the feel of all the music come across, because that's what he did to me. He made every song have a certain kind of feel, connection to it. It never overstepped the song. It always in support of the song, and so it's more of a global thing to me to approach the music that way for 2 hours, whatever it is, a night, and try to bring that the whole time. You know?
Are you ready? Gonna need some help on this one.
There have been many times where people compare you to Jeff, and it's been done so much that does it ever get annoying? Because you kind of sound even more like Shannon Forrest.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that. I mean, it's a double-edged sword, no pun intended, with the Toto sword, you know, because to be compared to Jeff in my mind is the highest, praise somebody could give, but then for people to kind of name you as sounding like someone else is also a slight that you don't have your own, approach or your own personality. That over the years with the band, I mean, when I came in, I just wanted to bring a certain thing to the music that I missed, not taking anything away from Simon, but when I walked in, it was like, okay, I want to return to kind of the way I felt the music. So I paid maybe a little more inside just toward what was on the records and keep things in a certain parameters within that. And then as the years have gone on, I've been able to stretch and kind of infuse more of my way of playing, which is always going to be there. I mean, we all wish we could sound like our mentors, but we can't, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So.
I think you're a very technical player, and I've heard you talk about how important the velocity and the stroke is to the groove in making it sound and feel just right. Can you elaborate on that a little?
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting thing to I'll point out too, because I am probably really technical about dissecting groove. You know what I mean?
I've gathered.
But as far as technical as a drummer, I'm pretty. I'm not so much that way. I've developed a certain amount of technique over the years because I've been playing them now for almost 50 years, right?
Yeah.
But my emphasis has always been about that. And if I heard something that made me feel good, like want to move, like I love the way that feels, then I would look at and we didn't have this so much when we were coming around. There wasn't video everywhere. You couldn't dissect someone's movements when they played. But you could see a certain approach to the hands and things, and you could see, like, I remember the first time I got to see Bernard play, and Bernard and Jeff both are associated with that halftime shuffle, but they both play my favorite versions of it, but very different, you know. And so the first time I got to be close to Bernard at a NAMM show, and I saw his hands down here, and just kind of slinging his hands around, you know what I mean? That little snappy way that he plays. I'm going, okay, I'm studying that and go, well, if I want to play a tune and swing it a little differently like Bernard does, then it becomes geometry and the physics of also shifting your body around a little bit for that groove, And so those things I paid attention to. I remember seeing the way Jim Keltner hits my favorite drummers, Gadsden, and a lot of the same people Jeff talked about. Manu, who you've had on. I mean, his stroke, the stick is kind of far out in his hand, and he's got a very symphonic kind of stroke, All those guys, if I want to bring a piece of that feeling in whatever way I can to something I'm doing, you kind of have to bring the technique into it as well,
Did you listen to Richie Hayward much?
Ah,
Because you have a YouTube video swinging and
Yeah.
And I'm going, man, there's so much.
Yeah.
It seems like some Richie Hayward
Now,
influence.
you know, the things to be careful here, because I don't want anybody to think that I make these assumptions about myself, because I would never, you know. Richie is like woefully underappreciated, you know.
Yeah.
When you look at the way he was playing the drums, the way they sounded, and the way he was playing the pocket in around 1970, you know, so, and before that, of course, you know.
Yeah.
I realized later on that there's a couple of drummers that I think I'm probably more similar to in some automatic way. My center of time, I think, is maybe a little more like Rick Marotta's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then that swing thing that's always been an appeal to me is coming from Richie Hayward, you know, indirectly, and I wasn't even that up to speed on that, you know what I mean? When I get a wind of it later, I realized that there's something kindred there too, and some of my close friends who have traveled in that company have pointed the same thing out, you know? And I'm like, damn it, I want to sound more like that, you know what I mean? But you start to realize, I don't know what it is that makes that up. It's because Richie, I would have thought, man, is he a Southern boy? He's not, obviously. He's an LA guy, right? He was in that area his whole life. So I don't know. I do think there's something to geography and upbringing, and you know what I mean? And
Interesting.
That comes through in all that, you know.
So Google gave me a couple of answers on this, but around 2010, 2011, you were asked to perform with the Dukes of September.
Yeah.
Featuring Donald Fagen, McDonald and Boz Scaggs. The gig featured some of the best songs from the three talented songwriters. Was there one song you did with that group that you really looked forward to every night?
Yeah, speaking of Rick Marotta, Peg, every night, you know. And different guys approach that song differently. The whole, you know, the main hook of that thing is just dotted eighths. Bum, 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 right?
Yeah.
Rick's pattern on the record is bum, two, So it's completely counter to that bum, bum, bum.
Yeah.
He's leaving that alone.
Yeah.
You know, and so the way he's playing that hand-to-hand thing, I think, is he should be Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for that group. Like, if you get one of those, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
you should have a statue, you know? But every night when we would get to that, it was a real study for me, because there's an interesting swing, and we would come out of a different tune, and anybody playing live can relate to this. If you're playing like extended period of time on 16th notes and you come cold into a shuffle, it's like the muscle memory in here is shaped in fours instead of threes.
Mm-hmm.
There's something going on. So my cue, I want to hit that downbeat of that tune when the drums drop in, exactly in the swing, you know?
Yeah.
And what I realized the swing of that tune is, and I should have known this, but it's Donald's vocal. So when he goes, I see your picture, that dun dun, like, that's it. So all I got to do is cue off of his vocal, and I know exactly, you know, and that's the swing. So I always look forward to that tune to try to lock in on that groove, you know what I mean, and just to get to play that groove. And here we go.
Yeah, our mics are going to pick up. Yeah, I think we're going to be okay.
All right.
So when you started doing your research for that gig, how did you decide to approach the iconic Steely Dan tunes? You did Kid Charlemagne, Peg,
Yeah.
Hey 19, and Reelin' in the Years, right?
Yeah.
Or were you familiar enough with them?
Luckily, I was familiar with all that music pretty well. It was again, particular drummers I had studied. I'd studied those tunes. Tried to play along with Kid Charlemagne so many times, which that's Bernard, and it's a very similar groove to what he plays on Rocksteady. You know what I mean? It's that thing. So, yeah, I look forward to playing those gigs and trying to do some justice to the way those guys played them. Instead of taking a totally different approach to it and maybe squaring them up a little bit or something, I just try to do my best to give some homage to the way those guys played them.
Yep. You also produced and played on Michael McDonald's CD Wide Open.
Yeah.
That's very cool. How did that happen? How did he happen to trust you with the reins of that project?
Well, I was fortunate. I spent 8 years in the studio with Mike as a partner, and we worked on so much music over the years. We had accumulated some unfinished work, right? And he was spending a lot of time in Santa Barbara again, and I was home one summer. I turned down a tour, and I had finished my studio, and I was putting some emphasis into production. So I took 4 songs of that album that had sat, where I had a great vocal, where we had worked together, and I just put a little bit of some tracks around them and freshened them up and sent them to Mike, and he got excited. And we just spent the next couple of years, when his schedules would overlap, making that record.
Finishing it.
Yeah,
that's great. I noticed on that recording that you're also credited with playing some keyboards. Do you play other instruments?
Well,
or you stumble through?
No, it's I was forced to take piano lessons when I was a kid, and my dad was a piano player. I cannot play piano, but with a computer and a keyboard, I trained my ear to be able to hear chords, so I can listen to a song and write a chord chart. And then, of course, from there, I can take it to the piano and figure out where it is, And so some of the things on that record were stuff like that, just pads, nothing really rhythmic. And there was one string arrangement on there that I'm proud of having done,
Nice.
But with my dad being a string arranger, even that was not the same, because he would sit with a score and a keyboard and listen to the track and write everything. Now with Pro Tools, I have first violin here on it with a mouse, and I'm laying it all out while I'm listening to the track.
Yeah.
But still,
yeah. Is it true you told Taylor Swift after a recording session that you thought she should be recording some of her, more of her own stuff?
Yeah.
Which she is doing now.
Yeah. I mean, she was 15, it was before her first album came out, and there was a recurring thing. People have seen me talk about this before because I get asked a bit, but Nashville, they were looking for another LeAnn Rimes, another child star. That was just sort of one thing that was always coming through town. And she was forced in with some professional songwriters. And at the end of the day, we just recorded one tune that was more unique. It felt more authentic, and it was hers. And I told her, you shouldn't record anybody else's tunes. So
you can tell. I mean, you can feel it come out of her. Probably. Authenticity. Exactly.
is pretty. It's like somebody reading off a teleprompter or just talking.
Yeah.
And at least, that was very obvious to me about her then,
Early influences.
Early influences, well, my dad would be the biggest. He was putting headphones on me and taking me to the studio when I was 6 months old, and gave me every opportunity to be in a room where children shouldn't be, you know what I mean? Like it was just, I was there and I was treated like an adult. That guy, Buster Phillips, another drummer from that Carolina area who became an arranger, which is something that, you know, was influential on me. I was lucky to be around drummers who approached songs and music a certain way. A guy named Russell Malden, you know, was another drummer. And then, you know, some of the, like I say, I worked with Glenn Worf when I was 13. I mean, these are early opportunities. Just other musicians, you know, as far as people I came in contact with,
Yeah.
you know, we're all, Jeff, but now all these people we talked about, you know.
Talk to me about the Judson, McKinney, and the Wanderers project.
Yeah. So that is something that is still dedicated to. I met Judson kind of halfway through the pandemic, and I basically, after I did that Mike McDonald record, I was, you know, rethinking how I was going to utilize my studio and where I was going to put my energy. And this guy showed up and was one of the most, I mean, I knew right away he was authentic, big-time entertainer, great lyricist. So I just started helping him with some of his music.
At your studio?
At my
he
studio.
came into your studio, yeah.
Yeah, and then as I was working with him more as production and we were writing, then it started to make more of sense as a band project. And so that's still right at the forefront of what I'm doing. And we've, through the advice of some people around us, we've rebranded the band. It's called Renegade Roach. That's where you can find the music. So yeah, that's definitely the leading edge of what I'm doing, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I've definitely checked it out. It's good stuff.
Well, one thing I'll say about that is it is completely real. You know what I mean? Like I don't even let a click track near that stuff. It's the way we record, that's an interesting process, you know. Very much focused on trying to just keep it as real as possible.
It's funny because just this morning I was checking out Liberty Bells.
Yeah.
And you come off of the hi-hat like Charlie Watts used to. Is there a particular reason or?
Well, on that song I was thinking about Charlie a little bit, but also certain grooves like that like Charlie made such a mark with how he played, and there is a feeling when you're pulling that right hand up, you know. And so yeah, that's a nod to Charlie in some way without thinking about it, you know. Because I definitely, when I met Judson, he reminded me of in an indirect kind of way of Mick Jagger. And so the music we've been working on was not so much that, so we started working on things that would at least put his energy in that same place.
Yeah.
You know?
I thought I had heard somewhere that Charlie did that because he didn't like sometimes the hat and the snare.
Right.
The recording of that.
Yeah, I don't know, and I know, and you can isolate these things now, but like one of my favorite tracks is Miss You, and he is not lifting it on that. You know what I mean? So I don't think he always did.
Oh,
you know? Most of the time, though.
Yep. I usually ask people, do you have any advice for younger players? But I want to ask it this way with you. If you could go back and do something differently, is there one thing you would do differently?
Yeah, I probably would have put my focus on getting into a band, creating something, you know, of my own music earlier, because I kept expecting my studio work to put me into the musical, you know, surroundings that more of a rock kind of thing. And all that my studio work did was led to more studio work. And if that's in Nashville, it was just more of the same. So I probably would just tell myself, hey, you know, get a band started sooner. But I was always working with guys 20 years older than me. So it didn't make a lot of sense. And in Nashville, the community then, there weren't that many great young musicians. So I was used to playing with pros, so my attitude was I didn't want to play in some pickup band with, you know what I mean? I was already a professional. So it just was the path that I was on, you know?
When I grew up, there was neighborhood bands around. I don't know if you had that.
Well, at least not where I lived.
Yeah. Because I was going to ask you, how do you think social media has impacted, I mean, with YouTube and all that stuff, there's so much stuff on the internet these days.
I'll make it as quick as I can, or as straight ahead of one side of it. I mean, because you just scratched the surface of what I think is depriving as much of a flood of I'm just going to call it content. I'm not going to call it music. There's so much content on there that it's becoming numbing, I think, to people and desensitizing in some regard. Then the other thing I think that's a problem with it is that the skill, I'll put it this way, you can dissect something in ways that we used to have to be frustrated with. So if you're learning early on as a player, and to me there's a necessary struggle to figure out what someone was doing, and you're supposed to use your ears to do that. And when you have all this slowed down, isolated ways to view how guys are doing something, it gets you over the hump. And a lot of times what happens when I would try to figure something out, or we'd figure something out, you'd learn it the wrong way.
Yeah.
And that would make it yours, you know, somehow. And this, I think there's just something, because if it's too easy to learn, I think there's a lot of people that are sticking with music that would have quit 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Because they get frustrated. I can't figure out how to play Thunderstruck. Fuck this, I'm going back to throw the baseball or whatever the fuck else. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Now it's like you can skip and you think you're doing something and you're not getting any closer to it. Because the thing that you got to get close to is some personal thing, you know?
I'm dating myself, but I used to take 33 and a third records
Play
and
on a
listen to Steve
78?
Gadd.
Yeah.
No, and just drag my finger so I
Yeah.
could hear him go do ba di di do. Oh,
Yes,
oh, that's what he's doing.
Of course.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, listen, everything changes, but what I don't hear as a result of, just say if it's accelerating a certain learning curve,
Yeah.
composition is not something you can accelerate. It's
Right.
about human experience and your personality being melded into a voice of your own, you know? And so I think that's what's happening. I think you're getting a technical thing that gets way out in front, way out ahead of the development process that we're used to. Whatever, maybe it's different now.
Yep.
But what I don't hear out of this, you know, giant swath of music that's coming out every day is anything compositionally creative,
Yep.
you know? So.
Well, Shannon, I greatly appreciate you taking the time to meet with
Hey.
me today,
Absolutely, my pleasure.
and I hope you have a great gig tonight.
Yeah, I hope you enjoy it.
All right, thanks,
Yeah.
brother.
Thank you.